I didn't walk into marriage expecting magic, but I at least thought it would feel like something solid. Real. The first few months are supposed to be about building, learning rhythms, syncing habits, blending two lives into one. That's what I signed up for. But what I got with Madeline felt more like slow erosion. At first, it was subtle. She stopped meeting me at the door when I got home. Her hugs lasted a second too short. She used to make coffee in the morning before I even got out of bed, humming to herself in the kitchen. That disappeared almost overnight. I figured it was just the stress of the adjustment. New routines, bills, grown-up life. But then the excuses started stacking. Work's been crazy. I'm heading out with the girls this weekend. We're doing a spa thing, just us. You'd hate it. That one stuck with me. You'd hate it. I didn't hate massages. I didn't hate the mountains. What I hated was being told, kindly and consistently, that I didn't belong in the places she was going, that I wasn't invited. At first, I tried to be understanding. I encouraged the self-care trips. I even offered to book something for both of us. She brushed it off with a laugh and a wave, saying she needed space, time with her girls. But the details never added up. No social media posts. No pictures with the friends she said she went with. And when I casually asked for a name, "Who went with you?" she'd stumble, stammer, say things like, "Oh, you wouldn't know them, or you met them once, I think." I didn't push. Not yet. Then her phone became sacred. Always face down. Always locked. If I walked into the room mid-call, she'd lower her voice. Or hang up. She used to scroll through reels on the couch with her head in my lap. Now, she was perched on the far end of the sectional, texting someone like her life depended on it, guarding the screen like it held national secrets. I'd be lying if I said I didn't have suspicions. But the truth? I didn't want to believe them. Because this wasn't just any woman. This was Madeline. The woman I met in a coffee shop 2 years ago, who quoted Vonnegut and smiled with her whole face. The woman who made me feel like the rest of the world finally made sense. I loved her. Fully. Dumbly. And then came the name I hadn't heard in months. Derek Monroe. Derek wasn't just an old friend. He was my closest friend. College roommate. Best man at our wedding. The guy I called when I got promoted, when my dad was in the hospital, when Madeline first said she loved me. He was the one who introduced us, for God's sake. That's why I didn't connect the dots at first. But there were little things. I'd mentioned Derek in passing. He texted me, or he might stop by, and Madeline's whole body would stiffen for half a second. She'd change the subject. Pretend she hadn't heard. Then I saw his name pop up on her screen. Once. Just once. Her phone buzzed while she was in the shower. I walked past the kitchen counter, and there it was. Derek Monroe. No message preview. Just his name. Like a warning. And that's when I started watching. Not snooping. Watching. Observing. I wasn't looking to catch her in a lie. I was waiting to stop lying to myself. Then, a week later, I was cleaning out the hall closet and found her old iPad. The thing hadn't been touched since we moved into the new place. I figured I'd reset it and use it in the workshop. But when I powered it on, her cloud account loaded like it never left. No passcode. No warnings. Just images. Madeline. Derek. Together. Laughing over wine in a restaurant we used to love. Him kissing her forehead in a selfie. A cabin I didn't recognize. Her in one of my sweatshirts, sitting on his lap like it was the most natural thing in the world. And then, the texts. Derek. You sure he doesn't suspect anything? Madeline, he's clueless. I could do this forever. My mouth went dry. My heart didn't race, it froze. I scrolled through photo after photo, message after message. It was all there. Not just proof. A story. A timeline. A full season of betrayal captured in high resolution. I set the tablet down. My fingers were shaking, but I wasn't angry. Not yet. I was calculating. Because in that moment, I knew something with absolute clarity. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to let either of them control the ending. I was going to write my own. I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was heartbroken, though, maybe somewhere deep down, I was. But mostly because my brain was on fire. Every thought, every memory, every little overlooked moment suddenly made sense. And in that clarity, a plan started to take shape. Madeline had underestimated me. So had Derek. That was their first mistake. I spent the next few days pretending everything was normal. When she kissed me on the cheek, I smiled. When she made dinner, I thanked her. I played my role, husband, provider, oblivious fool. It wasn't easy. Every time I looked at her, I saw the photos. I heard the texts echoing in my mind. He's clueless. Forever. But I had something better than confrontation. I had time. They weren't going anywhere. Not yet. I could feel it in the way she moved, in how relaxed she'd become. She thought she'd gotten away with it. Derek, too. He texted me like nothing had changed. Invited me to a pickup game with the guys. Even called to ask if I could recommend a mechanic. I gave him one. And then I blocked his number. But I didn't confront him. Not yet. I started gathering what I needed. Screenshots of every text. Copies of receipts. GPS pings from the iPad's location history. I even pulled security footage from our doorbell camera. There he was, plain as day, slipping in one Friday afternoon while I was at work. Madeline hadn't even bothered to close the curtains. It was almost insulting how lazy they'd gotten. Then came the idea, the one that made everything click. Our anniversary was coming up in 3 weeks. Madeline had been dropping hints about doing something special, talking about a rooftop venue downtown she'd seen on Instagram. We should invite everyone, she said over dinner, swirling pasta around her fork. You know, make it a night to remember. I almost choked on my drink. But I nodded, smiled. Yeah, I said. Let's make it unforgettable. The next morning, I booked the venue. From there, it was a slow build. I told her I'd handle the planning, pretending it was a romantic gesture. She lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. You're the best, she whispered, kissing my cheek. Funny thing, she used to say that with sincerity. I reached out to friends and family, told them we were hosting a celebration, something intimate but elegant. I made sure Derek and his fiancée, Lauren, were on the list. I even texted Lauren myself. Can't wait to finally catch up at the party, I wrote, like I wasn't sitting on a digital bomb. She responded with a heart emoji. While Madeline worked on her dress and the flower arrangements, I built a slideshow. Not the one she was imagining. No romantic montages or honeymoon photos. This was something different. Honest. Brutal. A timeline of deceit, curated for maximum impact. I organized the images by date. Paired text messages with matching photos. Included video clips. Nothing explicit, just enough to make the truth inescapable. I added background music, something slow and dramatic. Something that would hit when the lights dimmed and the screen lit up. And just to make sure I hadn't missed anything, I hired a private investigator. Not because I needed more proof, but because I wanted to see just how far they'd gone. Turns out, they'd gone farther than I thought. Multiple weekend trips. Hotel reservations under fake names. A rental cabin 3 hours away, paid for with my card. He even borrowed my car once. Told me he needed it while his was in the shop. I laughed when I saw the PI's photos. It was almost cartoonish, how reckless they'd been. By the week of the party, everything was in place. Madeline was glowing. She kept calling it our fresh start, saying how lucky we were to have each other. She posted teasers online, photos of the venue, snippets of decorations, captions like, "Forever starts here." If only she knew. Every night that week, I lay in bed next to her and counted the hours. Not with dread, not with anxiety, with anticipation. The night of the party arrived like a storm I'd been watching on the radar for weeks. Unavoidable, calculated, and perfectly timed. I stood by the entrance of the rooftop venue in downtown Lexington, greeting guests as they arrived. Smiles, hugs, handshakes. Everyone looked happy to be there. No one had any idea what was really about to happen. Madeline floated through the crowd like a queen. Her dress was deep burgundy, classy and elegant, and she wore it like armor. She kissed cheeks, laughed easily, took selfies with friends. She looked like a woman in love, married to a man she adored. I watched her closely. She wasn't just playing the part, she believed it. She genuinely thought she had me wrapped around her finger, that her lies were buried so deep I'd never dig them up. She had no idea I'd already built the grave. "Jake, this is amazing," she whispered to me as the last few guests settled in. "Thank you. Really." I smiled and kissed her forehead. "Anything for you, Maddie." She beamed. And then he walked in. Derek Monroe. He was wearing a dark suit, his tie just slightly askew, like always. Casual charm. Effortless. And on his arm, Lauren, his sweet, radiant fiancée who had no idea the man she loved had been sneaking around with mine. He spotted me across the room and raised a hand. I waved back. Calm. Casual. My heart didn't even race. I had rehearsed this moment so many times, I felt like I was gliding through it. Madeline stiffened for just a second when she saw him. It was subtle, but I caught it. Then she smiled again and excused herself to go check on the caterers. Right. Because she always checks on hors d'oeuvres 15 minutes after the party starts. I gave her a few minutes. Then, I stepped onto the small stage at the edge of the terrace. The music faded. Lights dimmed. Glasses clinked as conversations quieted. I tapped the microphone once. "Good evening, everyone." I began, my voice steady. "First off, thank you for being here. It means a lot to Madeline and me that you came to celebrate this milestone." Applause. Smiles. Cameras flashing. I held up my hand and let the crowd settle again. "This has been a wild year," I said. "Not because of the usual ups and downs, but because I learned something important. I learned that sometimes love isn't what you think it is. Sometimes it's not warm or safe. Sometimes it's quiet and sharp." Nervous chuckles here and there. I caught Derek shifting uncomfortably. Madeline appeared near the bar, her smile frozen. "But tonight," I continued, "we wanted to share a video. Just a little highlight reel of our time together. A look back. The real story." I clicked the remote. The screen behind me flickered to life. It started innocently. Wedding photos, a few candid shots of us laughing, holding hands. The guests leaned in, smiling, touched. Madeline relaxed. And then, the tone shifted. A screenshot of a message. "Derek, wish you were here instead of him. Madeline, soon. Just a few more lies to sell." The room froze. Gasps broke out like firecrackers. The next image, a photo of them together at a lake house. Her wearing my sweatshirt. Him holding her waist. Then came the video. Them kissing in our living room. My living room. While I was out buying groceries, according to the timestamp. Madeline let out a strangled gasp. Derek looked like he'd been hit in the chest. I didn't flinch. Guests whispered. People turned in their chairs. Some looked at Madeline. Others at Derek. A few glanced at Lauren, who sat completely still, blinking at the screen as if her brain was still buffering. And then, Lauren stood up. She walked calmly across the room to Derek, reached into her purse, and pulled out a ring. She didn't say a word, just dropped it into his drink and walked out. He didn't follow. Madeline rushed toward me, pale and frantic. "Jake, please, what are you doing?" I handed her a white envelope. "Your gift." She opened it. "Divorce papers. Signed. Finalized. Dated yesterday." "You said this night would be unforgettable," I said softly. "You were right." She looked like she wanted to cry, scream, run, all at once. But the silence in the room swallowed her. I turned back to the crowd. "Thanks again for coming," I said. "Dinner is still being served. Enjoy the view." And with that, I stepped off the stage and walked through the crowd like a man walking out of a fire without a single burn. Because the blaze was behind me, the night air hit me like a reset button. I walked out of that rooftop venue feeling like I'd just stepped off a stage. My heart wasn't racing anymore. My hands weren't shaking. I didn't feel rage or sadness or even victory. I just felt clear. Everything was quiet in my head for the first time in months. Behind me, I imagined the fallout playing out in real time. Madeline trying to hold herself together. Derek scrambling to explain. Friends and relatives whispering, shifting, processing what they'd just seen. But I didn't stick around to watch it burn. I'd done what I came to do. Outside, Lexington's skyline glittered above me like a promise. My car was parked a block away, but I took the long way around, walking in silence. It wasn't just about cooling off. It was about reclaiming something. My time. My choices. My life. When I got home, I poured myself a drink and sat on the back porch. Just me, the stars, and the hum of cicadas. I kept my phone in my pocket. I already knew what I'd find if I looked. Text from Madeline, missed calls, maybe even a voicemail from Derek, begging me to be reasonable. I had no interest in hearing any of it. Instead, I listened to the wind. I let the quiet settle deep into my bones. The kind of quiet you don't realize you've missed until you finally hear it again. It was late when I finally went inside. I passed by the hallway where her shoes used to be, saw the empty space on the nightstand where she kept her books. I paused for a moment, not out of grief, but out of observation, like visiting a museum of a life I no longer lived. I slept better that night than I had in weeks. When I woke up, sunlight was pouring through the blinds. I didn't feel heavy. I didn't feel empty. I felt light, like I'd dropped a weight I didn't know I'd been carrying. My phone, still on the kitchen counter, had 17 missed calls. 10 from Madeline, 3 from Derek, 1 from her mother, and another from a blocked number I didn't bother opening. No voicemails. Just desperation. I poured a cup of coffee and took it to the living room. Sat down. Turned on the TV for background noise, but my mind was already somewhere else. Thinking about the next step. Not out of revenge, but out of curiosity. What does freedom taste like after months of pretending? That afternoon, a message popped up on my screen from someone I hadn't expected. Lauren Hayes. Short. To the point. Thank you. If you ever need a strong drink or a clean break laugh, let me know. I stared at it for a moment, smiled, and typed back. How about both? She replied with the name of a bar and a time, Baxter's Tavern. 7 p.m. The same place where Derek and I used to meet up for wings and beer after work. Funny how places shift meaning. That night, I walked into Baxter's and saw her immediately. Sitting in a booth by the window, a half-finished cocktail in front of her and an untouched plate of fries. She looked up and gave me a half-smile. The kind you give someone who understands your kind of hurt. I wasn't sure you'd show, she said. I slid into the booth across from her. Honestly, I wasn't sure either. We talked for hours. About them, of course, but also about everything else. Childhood stories. Worst dates. Favorite movies. She was sharper than I expected. Witty, quick to laugh, but with that edge people only develop after being lied to for too long. It's wild, she said at one point, swirling the last of her drink. How someone can ruin your idea of reality and still sleep at night. I nodded. The part that gets me is how easy it was for them. Like we were the extras in their movie. She looked at me, then smirked. Well, not anymore. We clinked glasses. I didn't think I'd be sitting across from Lauren Hayes, trading jokes over whiskey and fries. But I was. And for the first time in a long time, the world didn't feel like it was closing in. It felt open, wide, unwritten, and I was finally ready to turn the page. The days that followed the party felt like stepping into someone else's life, a version of mine with less noise, fewer lies, and absolutely no pretending. Madeline tried. Of course she did. She called every morning and every night. Left long, drawn-out voicemails filled with trembling apologies, false starts, and tearful pauses. She even showed up outside my office one afternoon, sunglasses on, standing like a statue near the parking lot. I walked past her without slowing down. It wasn't anger anymore. It was detachment, like she was a chapter I'd already closed. A photo I'd taken down and put away. I didn't hate her, I just didn't care. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. We'd already filed, but Madeline still thought she could negotiate. Can we just talk, Jake? She wrote. You can't erase everything we had. Funny how she only said that after losing control of the narrative. Her parents reached out once too. Robert and Margaret Whitaker. They'd always liked me, or at least pretended to. After the party, Margaret left me a voicemail. Jake, we're so sorry for what our daughter's done. Please know this doesn't reflect how she was raised. I didn't call back. Meanwhile, Derek disappeared completely. Word spread quickly. The slideshow I presented ended up in more than one group chat, apparently. A few people even asked me to send them the full version. I didn't. This wasn't about entertainment. This was about closure. Lauren made sure the rest of the damage was done. She posted a public statement. Nothing messy or bitter, just the truth. She thanked friends for their support and made it very clear that her engagement to Derek was over. Permanently. By the end of the week, Derek lost more than just his relationship. He lost his job. Turns out his firm had a strict ethics clause, something about personal integrity and reputation. They didn't want a guy like him representing their brand. The irony would have made me laugh a month ago. Now, I just noted it and moved on. I wasn't chasing karma, but I wasn't stopping it either. At home, things got quiet, peaceful. The house felt bigger somehow, even though nothing had changed. I moved a few things around, cleared out the last of Madeline's stuff. Her shoes, her scarves, the mug she used every morning that somehow always ended up in the living room. Gone. I boxed it all up and left it on the porch. She picked it up 2 days later without a word. The space she left behind wasn't empty, it was open, and I started to fill it. I went back to the gym, not because I was trying to prove anything, just because it felt good to sweat again. I started reading before bed, something I used to do all the time. Revisited a few old hobbies I'd shelved when life got too loud. I even picked a weekend and booked a solo cabin trip. One of the places Madeline always claimed was too boring to bother with. It was exactly what I needed. Lauren and I kept in touch too. We didn't talk about Derek or Madeline much anymore. Instead, We traded restaurant recommendations, movie critiques, and occasionally memes that would have made our exes furious. She had a sharp sense of humor, the kind that stayed with you after the conversation ended. One night, she sent me a photo of a burned steak with the caption, "Tried to cook. Send fire department." I replied, "That's a murder scene. You're under arrest." She wrote back, "Guess I'll just stick to takeout. You free Friday?" I paused for a moment, then typed, "I am now." We met up that Friday at a cozy little place on the edge of town. Not a date, at least not officially. Just two people who'd been through hell and decided not to stay there. We talked about books, about growing up in families that always expected more, about how weird it felt to laugh again and actually mean it. She admitted she wasn't ready to trust anyone yet. I told her I wasn't either. And that was the best part. There was no pressure, no expectations, just the comfort of being understood. When I got home that night, I stood in the kitchen, hands on the counter, and realized something. I didn't feel broken. I didn't feel like a man who'd been cheated on, lied to, humiliated. I felt like someone who'd survived. Better than that, I felt like someone who was starting to live again. It's strange how fast things can go from chaos to calm. A few weeks ago, I was living in a house filled with lies, pretending not to see what was right in front of me. Now, I wake up to silence, and I welcome it. No half-truths over breakfast. No watching someone pretend they're late because of traffic while they're texting the man who used to be my best friend. Just peace. And coffee that actually stays hot. The divorce paperwork went through quicker than expected. Madeline didn't fight it. Not after the party. Not after losing the narrative. Her lawyer tried a few last-minute adjustments, spousal support, partial equity in the house, but I'd planned ahead. Everything important was in my name. The savings had already been moved. The house was protected. Even the lease on her car was under me, and I let it go the minute she packed her things. She ended up crashing with a cousin out in Richmond. I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she tried to explain her side of the story to anyone who would listen. But people weren't buying it. You don't bounce back easily after being exposed in front of your entire social circle. Derek was worse off. He vanished completely. No social media, no texts, no job, no home. Lauren told me he was staying on his brother's couch and trying to freelance while he figured things out. I didn't ask for more. I didn't need to. I wasn't angry anymore. I was done carrying that. Instead, I started focusing on rebuilding, not just my routine, but myself. I repainted the guest room, bought new sheets, rearranged the living room furniture just enough to make it feel different. I started cooking more, too. Actual meals, not just frozen pizzas or cereal at 10 p.m. Turns out, cooking for one isn't depressing when you're at peace with being alone. Lauren and I kept our Friday ritual. We never called it anything. Not a relationship. Not even dating. We just showed up, talked, laughed, shared stories. Sometimes we sat in silence, and that was okay too. She brought a lightness I didn't realize I'd been missing. One Friday, we met at a bookstore cafe she loved. She walked in wearing a hoodie and jeans, no makeup, hair tied up, and still looked like the most grounded person in the room. "You ever think," she said over coffee, "that we were meant to meet this way?" I raised an eyebrow. "You mean after being betrayed by the two people we trusted most?" She smirked. "Yeah, like the universe had to shake us both loose so we'd stop settling." I leaned back in my chair, considering that. I used to think life was about stability, about finding someone and holding on tight. And now I think it's about knowing when to let go. She smiled. Not the polite kind. The real kind. That night, she kissed me for the first time. Nothing dramatic. No music swelling in the background. Just two people, a dim parking lot, and a moment that felt honest. And that's what made it matter. The next morning, I woke up and realized I hadn't thought about Madeline once. Not in frustration, not in sadness, not in curiosity. She just wasn't there anymore. Not in my house. Not in my head. It wasn't about moving on with someone else. It was about moving on with myself. That weekend, I drove out to the lake by myself. No one waiting at home, no one texting to check where I was. Just me, a packed lunch, and a quiet trail I'd always wanted to hike. I turned off my phone and started walking. The breeze felt like a reset. The stillness didn't scare me like it used to. Somewhere along the path, I sat on a flat rock, pulled out my water bottle, and stared at the rippling lake. And it hit me, freedom isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It just arrives one day when you realize you're no longer trying to fix something that was never yours to save. I'd been holding on so tightly to a version of love that was never real. And now that I'd let it go, everything else was starting to feel real again. There's a certain clarity that comes after everything burns down. A kind of stillness that's almost addictive. I started noticing things I'd ignored for years. How much I liked walking at night. The way sunlight hit the porch at noon. The old guitar gathering dust in the corner of my closet. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was noticing, feeling, choosing. Lauren and I never defined what we were. And that was the beauty of it. We didn't need to. We were two people learning how to be okay again, side by side, no pressure, just presence. Some nights, we'd sit in her backyard and say nothing for an hour. Just breathe. It was the most honest relationship I'd ever been in, and we hadn't even called it one. She brought over pizza on a Tuesday, no reason. We ate it on the floor of my living room like teenagers, laughing at how bad the crust was. "This is the worst pizza I've ever tasted," she said, chewing through a bite like cardboard. "I told you it looked suspicious. And yet you let me order it." I was being polite. She grinned. "You were being passive-aggressive." I leaned back and smiled. "You're not wrong." It was moments like that, not grand gestures, not dramatic declarations, that made me realize something had shifted in me. I wasn't chasing validation anymore. I wasn't measuring my worth by how needed I felt. I was just living. But peace, I've learned, has a way of attracting ghosts. Late one evening, I got a text from an unknown number. No message, just a photo. It was of me and Lauren, taken a few nights ago outside Baxter's. We were laughing, leaning into each other. From a distance, another message followed. "Didn't take you long to replace me. Madeline." I stared at the screen for a long time. Not because I was hurt, but because of how familiar the manipulation felt. That undercurrent of guilt. The subtle hook she was trying to throw. She'd always been good at turning the tables, painting herself as the one who'd been wronged. I could practically hear her voice as I read the words. Soft, trembling, performative. I put the phone down and didn't respond. A few minutes later, another message came through. "Just wanted to say I'm sorry. For everything." I sighed. I wasn't angry. I wasn't tempted. I was just tired of the reruns. Lauren noticed I was quieter than usual that night. We were watching a movie, some dark comedy neither of us were really paying attention to, and she muted it halfway through. "You okay?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah, just echoes from the past." She didn't press, just reached over and squeezed my hand. That was all I needed. The next morning, I deleted the messages. Not out of spite, but out of peace. Madeline had already taken enough from me. My energy didn't need to be one of those things. Later that week, Lauren invited me to meet some of her friends. It was the first time I'd been introduced to someone as more than Jake, the guy who got burned. It was subtle, but there was warmth in the way they greeted me, like she'd already told them who I was, and not just what I'd been through. That meant more than she knew. One of her friends, Alyssa, pulled me aside at one point and said, "We're glad you're here." She needed someone solid. It caught me off guard. For so long, I'd felt like the one who needed grounding. But maybe I was finally becoming that person for someone else. Later that night, as we drove back to her place, Lauren looked over at me and said, "I don't think I've laughed that much in a long time." "Me neither," I said. And I meant it. I didn't know what the future looked like. I wasn't making plans or writing expectations. But for the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking backward. I wasn't rereading old chapters or searching for missing pieces. I was just here, present, whole. And no photo from the past, no desperate text, no ghost from the life I left behind could touch that. I used to think healing came with a checklist. As if there were boxes to tick. Confront the truth, get revenge, sign the divorce papers, start over. Like it was a formula, a process, something linear. But healing doesn't work that way. It's not a straight line. It's more like a loop. You feel strong, and then something random hits you, and suddenly you're staring at a wall, wondering why it still hurts. But then the feeling passes, and you're lighter than before. Not because nothing touched you, but because it did, and you kept going. That's where I was now. Still moving, still learning. One Saturday morning, I woke up to sunlight pouring across my bedroom floor. No alarm, no plan. I just laid there, watching dust float through the beams of light, realizing I hadn't had a nightmare in weeks. No more dreams about Madeline's voice. No more flashes of that slideshow. Just quiet. I made pancakes. Bad ones, but they were mine. I didn't burn them this time. which felt like a win. Lauren texted around noon asking if I wanted to drive out to a sunflower field just outside town. Spontaneous picnic, she wrote. I smiled. We loaded up the car with sandwiches, lemonade, and a Bluetooth speaker. Drove with the windows down and the music a little too loud. When we reached the field, it was practically glowing. Endless gold stretching to the horizon. The kind of view that makes you forget, for a second, that bad things ever happened. We laid out a blanket under the shade of a tall oak tree. She kicked off her shoes and leaned back on her elbows, face tilted to the sky. You ever think about what's next? She asked quietly. I thought about it for a second. Sometimes. But I'm trying not to plan too hard. I think I planned too much before, you know. She nodded. Yeah, me too. We sat in silence for a while. The kind that's comfortable, not awkward. I watched a dragonfly hover near her knee, then dart off toward the sunflowers. I'm not scared of the future anymore, I said, mostly to myself. She looked at me, soft smile playing at her lips. That's kind of beautiful. I turned to her. What about you? She shrugged. I used to think I had to build the perfect life, or else I was failing. But now, I think I just want to build a real one. The way she said it, simple, grounded, it struck something in me. We didn't talk about Madeline or Derek that day. We didn't need to. They felt like echoes now, distant and dull. What mattered was this: sunlight, lemonade, soft laughter, and a sense of beginning. Later that evening, we stopped by a small roadside diner for milkshakes. We sat in the car with the windows rolled down, watching the sky melt into orange and lavender. Lauren handed me her shake and said, "Taste this." I think they forgot the peanut butter. I took a sip. Nope, it's there, just hiding behind the chocolate. She grinned. Story of my life. That night, as I walked her to her door, she turned and said, "You don't owe me anything, Jake. You don't have to prove you're okay." I looked at her, surprised. "I know you've been through it," she said. "I just don't want you to think you have to be perfect around me." I took her hand. "I don't think I'm perfect. I just think I'm done pretending to be broken." She didn't say anything. She just leaned in and kissed me. Not a dramatic, cinematic kiss. Just a warm, quiet one. And that said everything. When I got home, I stood in my hallway for a long time. I looked around at the house that had once felt like a prison and now felt like possibility. There was no trace of Madeline left. No trace of the man I was when she walked out the door. Just me. And the life I was finally ready to build. Not out of pain, but out of hope. A few months ago, I was the guy holding the wreckage of a life I thought was real. Now, I'm just a guy drinking coffee on his front porch, watching the morning unfold like it owes me nothing. And finally, I'm okay with that. The world didn't change. The pain didn't disappear overnight. But I changed. I stopped clinging to what broke me. I stopped defining myself by someone else's decisions. And most of all, I stopped waiting for closure. Madeline reached out one last time. A letter in the mail, handwritten, thick with everything she thought I needed to hear. Regrets, confessions. If I could go back, I would paragraphs. I read it once. Then I put it in a drawer and never touched it again. Because I already had what she was trying to offer. Peace. I don't hate her anymore. I don't feel anything at all. That's how I know I'm free. As for Derek, I haven't heard a word. Last I heard, he was trying to restart somewhere out west. New city, new job, new circle of people who don't know who he really is. Let them find out in their own time. That part of the story's not mine to finish. Mine's still unfolding. Lauren and I, we're still us. No label. No deadline. We take walks. We cook weird meals that sometimes turn out terrible. We go to farmers markets on Saturdays and make fun of overpriced pickles. We're not rushing anything. We're not forcing anything. And that's what makes it work. Sometimes, when we sit in silence, I catch her looking at me like she's trying to read something hidden between the lines of my face. She never asks, never presses, but she sees me. All of me. Not as the guy who got betrayed, but as the guy who came through it. One Sunday evening, as we watched a thunderstorm roll in, she asked, "Do you ever miss it? Your old life?" I thought about it. I missed the version of me who believed in it, I said. But not the life itself. She nodded. I get that. We didn't say anything else after that. The rain did the talking. And somehow that was enough. Now, when I look in the mirror, I see someone I hadn't seen in a long time. Not the man I was before everything fell apart, but someone new. Someone honest. Someone whole. I don't check her social media anymore. I don't replay what happened in my head. I don't wonder what I could have done differently. Because the truth is, I didn't fail. I loved someone who didn't deserve it. I trusted someone who broke that trust. And I walked away with my integrity intact. That's not weakness. That's strength. And here's what I know now. Sometimes the people who hurt you don't come back to apologize. Sometimes they don't learn their lesson. Sometimes they walk away just as deluded as they arrived. But you still win when you choose to move forward anyway. I did. The sun's rising now. It paints the sky with soft gold and coral streaks, and the world feels quiet in a way that doesn't scare me anymore. There's no storm on the horizon. Just new days, clean slates, second chances. Not for them, but for me. I take a sip of my coffee and smile. Because for the first time in a long time, I'm not waiting for the other shoe to drop. There's nothing left to fall. Just me, standing in the sunlight, finally free. And that's more than enough.